Well, winter is certainly upon us here in the Southern Hemisphere, and there is snow on the Alps. If that appeals to you, then I would thoroughly encourage you to head across to the siteshed.com/events and check out the program we're running called Learn and Ski. In August this year, we'll be taking a group of business owners over to the lovely Wanaka in New Zealand, where we will be partaking in a ski workshop. We will be skiing in the mornings, and then we will be workshopping in the afternoons, and then in the evenings we will no doubt be checking out the bars and restaurants of Wanaka in New Zealand. It's a beautiful spot and there's some great mountains there. So if that's something that appeals to you, come along. It's basically a tax-deductible trip, and I've put that together because I want to help you guys find a way that you can take a bit of time out, get along, invest in yourselves, invest in your business, and learn some cool stuff that you can implement into your company while you also get a few runs in on the hill. So it's going to be a load of fun. There's a bunch of really cool people coming along. If it sounds like something you want to do, head across to the siteshed.com/events. Knowing how to sell correctly can either make or break a company. With that in mind, in this series, we are speaking with Adrian Fadini from traintosell.com.au, and the series name is Selling with Confidence. We put this series together because it's so important out there that people know not only how to sell correctly, but they also know how to attract the right type of customer into their organization. So Adrian's going to help us address three main areas. Firstly, we're going to be talking about knowing your hourly rate. Secondly, we're going to be talking about finding the right customers. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about how you sell to those customers. Going to be a great series. Adrian's an excellent communicator and he's very good at what he does. So enjoy.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello and welcome back to Toolbox Talks. Once again, thank you for sharing your earbuds with us wherever you are on this planet, joining us with the series I'm conducting with Adrian from Train to Sell. We're calling this Selling with Confidence Part 2, and Part 2 is called Finding the Right Customers. In Episode 1, in case you missed it, we were talking about knowing your hourly rate. If you did miss it, go back and check it out. Adrian dropped some absolute nuggets of gold in that episode, and in this one here, we're following up with how to find the right customers. So, Adrian, welcome back to the microphone.
Thank you very much, Matt.
And in the first episode, just to recap, we talked about knowing your hourly rate, and you gave a really good rundown of, I suppose, things that are typically overlooked that should be included within your pricing. And you've also, just for the listeners, that a matrix that they can download from the show notes, which is basically a step-by-step guide there on, well, things they should be considering when they are pricing. This episode, we're talking about finding the right customers. Now, obviously, one of the big objections when we're talking about, I suppose, raising prices, or changing a pricing structure from where it might be like an hourly rate over to, like a flat rate style model. One of the big objections is, well, how am I going to find people that are going to pay that? So in this episode, we're talking about finding them. Is that a big objection for you, Adrian, when you're out there trying to teach people how to sell?
Absolutely. Basically, a lot of people say, well, the market won't absorb that. And I guess when you're focused on something like price, that will draw whoever you're talking to be focused on price as well. So I guess it's a re-education of your mindset on where to focus. And I have a whole bunch of funny little exercises that we do inside the training to really get the point across that actual price is probably about the fifth or the sixth actual concern of a customer.
Yeah.
You can imagine, like, if you've got like a real estate agent that's really at the bottom of the rung when it comes to tradies when they're doing maintenance. It's kind of where you cut your teeth when you first start your business. They don't care too much about the tradie. They want it cheap. They want it yesterday, and they don't give you much information. They have very, very low dollar values, and that's also too because they're actually governed by the landlord that they're trying to make money for. So obviously they're not an ideal client. But if you, on the flip side of that, start looking at industries that might have maybe something in food and they've got a production line, and then all of a sudden if something goes wrong with their plumbing or electrical, there's hell to pay. There's a production line that's going to get stopped. All of a sudden price of the tradie doesn't matter. It's about service. It's about competency. It's about the value they provide. So it's a really, once you start to refocus on value as opposed to price, it actually becomes quite simple.
Yeah, look, I would agree with that. And I know, I don't even think it's not an industry-specific topic, this. I think it's very, very applicable into any vertical really you work in. It's very rarely about price. I mean, I'll look at, the my web design companies, and we're by no means the cheapest at all. But to be honest, we don't really get people coming to us looking for the cheapest. And I think it's probably a way that we've branded ourselves in the marketplace. But we firstly, we can't afford to be the cheapest because the product we offer is so much different to people out there that are competing on price. And I think that is a big point of difference for anybody. Make sure that you've got, that you can communicate what it is you do and why you do it differently. And then you tend to attract the right type of people to your business once you have that kind of model in place.
Absolutely. Matt, it's funny. I heard a quote the other day, only a rich man can buy cheap because they have to buy it, and then when it breaks, they have to buy it again, and when it breaks. So, yeah, cheap is cheap. I mean, we've all bought something that's cheap and nasty, and then we've regretted it at a later date. And I guess it just becomes a bit about becoming skillful in how to communicate that to your client, that value actually is cheaper in the long run. If you've got great warranties, you turn up when you say you're going to do. I mean, if you're working in a residential market and you work professionals, their hourly rate themselves could be in the hundreds of dollars an hour. So why would they go for a cheap plumber that might not show up when they say they're going to show up? So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So who are we talking to in this episode?
Okay, good call. I think we're talking to slightly bigger businesses than the previous episode. Probably 3, 4, 5, maybe up 10-man bands that are kind of, we are in a bit of a boom at the moment in Sydney, which is quite fortuitous. But we also need to start to look at, regardless, this is another really good point too about sales. Sales training doesn't just mean more sales. Sales training often means better sales. And that's actually what I spent last Friday with a bunch of guys in a training talking about. You want to be rating your clients from A to B. And all the guys in the room on that day were in the 3 to 5 man band companies. So I guess that's where we're talking today. But yeah, I'm a bit, sorry, mate. There's something to edit.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And so what about, I suppose, when we're talking about finding the right customers, if you're a plumber or a builder or electrician or whatever out there, and you've kind of built a business so far with a certain type of customer, however, that you want to sort of maybe win bigger jobs, or you want to sell to better customers, or you want to change that model. What's the process, I suppose, in making that segue?
Okay, so just to be clear, so I'm looking for more of the better clients. Is that what you're asking, Matt?
Well, yeah. I mean, you've been working with the same type of client for so long. However, you know that you want to change that customer, but you're not quite sure on how you go about it. What is the process there? Like, how do you do that?
Beautiful. So what I do in one of my trainings, we look at whoever your best customer is, and then you wish that you had 100 of those same customers. Let's say for this case, it's account customers, obviously. It's a bit hard to replicate the COD ones in this context. So we look at...
Is that right, though? I mean, surely there's a way that you can position yourself to attract a different type of customer, even from a COD point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. You could definitely, through your marketing and your positioning, I mean, you definitely could do that. I guess what's more current for me, I guess, in the fact of what I've done recently. Sorry, mate, this is a balls up, isn't it? All right. Let's just start with account clients. I've actually prepared a little bit of stuff on account clients, and then I'll move. I didn't actually think of COD yet, so I'll come to COD in a sec.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so Adrian, when we're talking about, I suppose, account-based clients, how can we target like a better type of client?
Sure. Well, I like to kind of flip it and look. I always like to state it in the positive what I'm looking for rather than what I don't want in life. If I keep saying don't think of the pink elephant, I'm thinking of the pink elephant, so to say. So I focus on what I do want. And when I look for good account clients, I look at exactly who I have currently. So there'll always be one standout client, and you kind of say to yourself, gee, I wish I had 100 of those. That'd be fantastic. I never have to stress about marketing or sales again. And then what I do a very simple exercise. Start to work out some, I guess, characteristics of that client. I start with the name at the top of an Excel spreadsheet, or even on a piece of paper will work fine. I work out the location. Where are they located? Okay, great. What industry are they in? What market position do they hold? And I'm just punching out all these different characteristics. I work out what are their terms and conditions. How quickly do they pay me? I also work out what are their communications like. What are their ease to deal with? And also then I guess one of the most important parts too is how much volume of work are they giving me? There's another 4 or 5 different characteristics that we outline. Once I outline all of those down on my best client, that sets a benchmark what I'm looking for. So then what I can do one or two things. I can start to look for clients laterally, or I could look for them in a linear way. So the way that I describe it is lateral prospects and linear prospects. So the lateral prospects might be, okay, that company we've just described is a strata company. So great, then it's pretty sure that all the other strata companies are pretty much going to fall into that category, and that would be all lateral. So they're all like a vertical. They're all on top of each other, all strata, all different types of strata. The lineal side of that is taking those characteristics and regardless of what industry it's in, then making sure that they kind of tick the boxes. Do they pay within 7 days? Do they easily, do I have to wait 3 months or 3 weeks or other to get a quote approved? Or do they pretty much approve a quote while I've got a plumber on site? So if they're doing that, great, they go in the right box. Are they based in Melbourne? Well, I'm in Sydney, so then they kind of fall out of that area, or even more geographically close to Sydney. Are they sending me to like the outer areas and regions of Sydney? Maybe they're sending me to Wollongong and Central Coast, and I'm based in Sydney, and it's a bit of a pain in the neck. Mm-hmm. So basically, I'm taking all the characteristics of my best company, setting that as a benchmark, and then whenever I go to the market, I'm looking for people or looking for clients with the same characteristics. Once they start to on the surface have a few of the same characteristics, I go, great, that's where my new prospects lay, and then I'll start to work out how to get in front of these clients.
Yeah, you just said something then that triggered something in my amazingly full head. When you were talking about then that process of, okay, are these people, when you send out when you quote somebody, are they getting back to you on time? Are they accepting the proposal, or are they dicking you around a bit? Do you think in some way or form, I know I've sort of been going through this myself in my own business, improving that process of following up with customers, does that fall into part of your training process?
Absolutely. There's an old saying, the fortune's in the follow-up, and I am almost on the verge of a stalker when I'm following somebody up, because I know what I've got to offer will make a difference. When you believe in what you do, follow-up becomes almost obligatory. You have to do it because you know that there's not much. If you're a great company, whether it be plumbing, electrical, or AC, there's a lot of guys out there that and companies out there that maybe they're too busy and they're not giving the service standards. You've got to believe in your team and yourself. So I absolutely drill home until someone gives me an absolute no, don't call me, don't follow me up. Then I'll stop. I'll respect their wishes, of course, but I'm a big proponent of teaching people how to follow up and follow up really, really well.
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic, because I think there's a very, very fine line between following up effectively and just becoming a pest. So knowing when and where to draw that line, I think, is pretty important within that sales process. I know for myself at the moment, I'm in the process of really automating that follow-up sequence, because if I send out a proposal and then I'm constantly every day calling this person and they're not answering, they're not replying to emails and all that kind of stuff, it just comes across like you're kind of desperate. And so which we're not, like, we've got so much work on, but it's just a matter of, in my CRM, my customer relationship management software, it tells me, every day you need to speak to so-and-so, bing, ring them, you haven't heard back, bing, you haven't heard back, ring them, email them, does this, so I just do it. But I'm thinking that, potentially it's not the right way to go about it. Because
Sure. I'll give you a little tip, Matt. And so this is the way, if I'm following up through a phone call or through an email, I'll always state, and let's say I don't get an answer or I don't get a reply, I go, hi, Adrian here from Train to Sell, following up on a quote. I'll follow up again in 3 days or 5 days' time. If you're not interested and you don't want to proceed, just reply not interested, and I'll stop following up. But until I hear that you're not interested, I will continue to follow up. So I'm basically asking for permission.
Yeah.
So if they're 99% of us are so busy, Matt, they're going, yeah. Guess what, Matt? Me and you don't rate high on other people's agenda. And the same thing happens for tradies out there. For a strata manager or facilities manager, you're one of about 20 or 30 people that are probably trying to chase them up for a decision of some sort. So you're just one of the many. So you don't want to take it on board that you're imposing upon them. They're probably just busy, and a true professional. I've had people say to me after 3 months of following up, "Thank you so much for following me up. I wanted to do it. I just couldn't find the time to breathe at that period. We're so busy, and I'm really, really grateful that you followed up. It shows that you really you care and you really want to do our work."
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar approach myself, and I'll always say to people, listen, I just keep following up because I keep getting pop-ups on the computer because I haven't heard back from you, and it will keep happening until I do hear back from you. So either way, let me know. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you was in the space of sending out these proposals, do you, when you say you were going to send out a proposal or a quote to do a, replace a hot water heater or do a, reline a sewer or whatever it might be, build a house, do you put expiry dates on them, or do you encourage people to?
Absolutely. You need some sort of urgency. Also, you just sparked my memory. Wherever possible, I know it's not always possible, especially if it's a tender process, but if it's a building manager, or maybe you're doing work for a builder, or possibly even with some strata managers, or at least with the executive committee, wherever possible, and especially you got to work out the dollar value of the quote. If it's a few $100, you wouldn't do this, but if it's in the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, deliver the quote in person, okay? I can't stress that enough. When you flick something in cyberspace, an email pops on my inbox, I'm looking at it, and there's, especially if I'm not, like, so let's say a member from the executive committee on a strata building, they're not a plumber, and if you've not worded your proposal in very layman's terms, they're going to be asked, they're going to have a whole bunch of questions, they're going to have a bit of confusion, and anytime there's confusion, you get no sale. Okay, even if you're there beside them and they're confused, guess what? You can answer any questions they may have. So they still may not make a decision there and then, but a couple of things happen. First of all, it shows that you care, it shows that you're interested, and also too, you can remove any possible confusion to, let's say it's again one of the members on the EC, and then they can go and spread the word to everybody else that has to make a decision on the executive committee. Yep. So it makes a profound difference to your close rate, especially if it's in the big, like in tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's a good point. I suppose that's something that people just get a bit complacent with these days. I mean, I know I'll probably do it myself, quoting big jobs. You just send it off the way we normally would, but maybe it would improve conversions to get out there and meet them.
I guarantee you it would, Matt, and I'll talk to you offline, mate. You'll be in trouble if you don't present it in person.
Yeah, awesome. Now, look, I know in the past you've employed some pretty interesting tactics into finding new and correct customers. Do you maybe want to just for the sake of the listeners to, I suppose, highlight how creative you can be? Just run through, some of your story.
Absolutely. Yeah, look, I'll start with the one that we already covered in the A to B. One of the ways I used to get in front of strata managers was ring up the ladies or the people on reception. Could have been men too, by the way, Matt. Yeah, on reception. And I would kind of build rapport and have a chat to them and tease them that I would come and do a rap song with my mascot, Plumber in their boardroom. But I'd tease them for a few days, and it would lead into a week, and then they'd say, "No, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it." And then eventually they would say, "Well, if you do it, I'll get 4 or 5 strata managers in the boardroom. You'll have half an hour." And I said, "All right, I'll bring coffee, cupcakes, and I'll bring my mascot, Plumberto, and I'll do a plumbing rap song." So that was a really successful way of getting through the gate. And as I mentioned in the A to B, that was only the beginning, because then you had to become very competent at what you did. Other things that I do too is I'd present to EGMs and AGMs and say, this is, like I've said to you a few minutes ago, extraordinary general meetings and annual general meetings in strata buildings. So actually talk to the actual people that are making the decision rather than the strata company. Because at the end of the day, I'm relating it back to strata. Strata is governed by, they even though they have some influence or a lot of influence, they don't have the final say. If someone in the EGM or the on the EC, the executive committee, decides they want to use a plumber, they're going to use that plumber. There's no other choice. A strata can't overrule that. So you want to build your relationships, especially if you're a small company, with maybe 1 or 2 or 3 buildings. So then that way they become very, very, very loyal to you, and then they basically, then the strata company might even give you some work in somewhere else. Also too, I think it's also important to have many touch points. So if I had an introduction to meet somebody, and let's say it was a week to a fortnight in advance, I'd always go through networking circles, and let's say it was a person that was owned a whole bunch of commercial buildings. For the next week or two, I'd keep and ask everyone that I know, do you know Joe Bloggs that owns these buildings? Okay. So then what I'd do, if someone would come up, and it happened on many occasions, that someone would know that person, and then I'd get them to do a second introduction. I just met this guy, you really need to meet him. So I've already got a meeting booked with this person in 2 weeks, but then I would get a second person that I knew through my network to introduce me just before the meeting. So they're going, oh my goodness, this guy's everywhere. I really need to meet him now. If I'm getting 2 introductions in a week or a fortnight, yeah, it must be a sign I should use their services.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Very sneaky.
I don't know about sneaky, mate. I think it's
very clever, I should have said.
Yeah, but believe in what you do, mate. I don't like to be sneaky.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. Look, in finding the right customers, how about a bit of a step-by-step framework? What can we do to find the right customers?
Right. So look for something like I said at the top of the call here. And look, you're right. It doesn't necessarily relate to industry because, of course, and I pick on the poor real estate agents because I guess there's top-end real estate agents and there's bottom-end real estate agents. So you're right. What you said, Matt, before, it's not industry specific. It's about market position specific is what I would say. So I would be looking for top-end companies that are looking for speed, cleanliness, all the key things that you're prepared to pay extra for. Mm-hmm. If you're dealing with, like I said, the bottom of the run, whether it be a real estate or whatever, they're just looking for cheap and nasty. You know, they're not looking for any special value. And also too, you've got to see where your services come into play. So once again, I use the production line analogy. If you've got a production line, they're making food for Qantas, let's say, and something happens and the drain blocks, that they could not care less what they're going to pay to get the drain fixed, because the amount of money that it's going to cost for the actual production line to be down for X amount of time, or even better still, they'll pay preventative maintenance, which would be even better. So you can lock them into a preventative maintenance schedule. But any time that there's going to be, I guess, some loss of interruption to business, some loss of income, and that could be avoided by either preventative maintenance or just really rapid response, they're kind of markets I'll be looking for.
Okay. Yeah, interesting.
Also, so mate, you did mention before a bit about CAD, and I think there's something really important to talk about when you're going to a general public, anyone in the general public's house. There's a thing that I look for. It's a distinction between explicit needs and implicit needs. And basically, explicit needs is I need my drain cleared. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty obvious. The drain's blocked, and I need the sewer out of my backyard, so to say. It's very obvious. It's very overt. It's very obvious to see with your eyes. The implicit needs are something that you can't see, right? It's something that you need to use your situational awareness to pick up what's actually going on. And I always use this example, the same example I use in my trainings. So if you turn up to a lady's house, and in this case it is a lady, in my hypothetical, Matt.
Yep.
So obviously you walk in the door, you can see there's a lot of kids' toys around. You can tell you start to look at the toys and you can say, okay, cool, the toys are saying the kids are school age, all right?
Yeah.
You can see this might seem pretty obvious to some people, but some people don't pick up on it. There might be a swing, there might be like a whole bunch of equipment out in the backyard, and that's right where the boundary trap is, and the sewer is overflowing right next to it.
Yeah.
So the explicit need is this lady wants her sewer cleaned. The implicit need is I don't want my kid. I want hygiene. I want the kids in the backyard this afternoon at 3:30, and I don't want a messy house. Okay, so you need to and you can ask questions to be clear on those implicit needs.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start to present your price, you don't talk about the jet blast and how long it's going to take and all that type of stuff. You mention the benefits of what they will receive if they sign off on accepting your quote. That by 3:00 this afternoon, I'll have this drain completely cleared up. I'll actually disinfect the backyard, and when the kids get here at 3:30, everything will be fine and dandy like it normally is. And I think it's a really important thing to be aware of, explicit versus implicit.
Yeah, that's a really good example. And that is something that I imagine, that's why sales training is powerful, because that is not obvious to a lot of people, especially technicians that, are there just to get out there and clear the block sewer. Like, I can't imagine there'd be many people that would be thinking of that sort of stuff. So that's really powerful. Good on you.
Thanks, mate.
Look, okay, I think that's pretty. Are you happy with that? I mean, is that pretty much a wrap for you on this episode?
Look, mate, I think so. There's definitely a whole bunch of other stuff. You've motivated me, mate. I'll start getting a blog out. We'll put a few points every month or so, and get a bit of information on things to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I suppose one of the things that I'd struggled with in the past. We had a lot of these sales trainers that came out from the United States, and they were teaching us how to sell products into the industry and how to upsell your customer and that kind of stuff. And I had a big problem with a lot of the way a lot of them presented that, or they train people. Like it'd be a lot of, sometimes you get people that would come out there and they'd be teaching us to go out there and if you get a call for a block, for a block drain, you go out there and then you as soon as you walk in the house, you're looking for things that, your hot water heater's due to expire in a year. We may as well replace that while we're here. Or your vanity unit's looking a bit damaged. Why don't we replace that? And just throwing all this other stuff at them. And I've never once found that worked in the Australian market. What's your take on that?
Matt, great point. I'm doing quite a bit of training, and there does seem to be a bit of a resistance. And no disrespect, the American guys trained me to start with, and I guess I've taken what I've learned and added an Australian flavour to it. We definitely have a different culture, there's no doubt. A couple of things that I do quite differently, where I've learned from the other guys, it's just one method of selling all the time. And first of all, I want to define what selling is. So my definition of selling is either helping a client or a prospect solve a problem, okay? Selling is not flogging something they don't need. It's not trying to have a gift of the gab or fast talking. It's identifying a problem, making sure that I've got the actual ability and services to fix that problem. If I don't, recommend who will be able to fix that problem. And if I do, I'll give them a quote, and then I'll make sure that I convey the fact that I can fix it and make sure they're in a better position than when they started. So it's really clear to start, because selling has a bad connotation in Australia. And I think it's really important to start with the fact that selling for me is helping. Simple as that. So the difference that I do, I guess, from some of American trainers is that I alter the way that I sell in regards to the person that's in front of me, in the sense that I use a model called DISC. DISC is just a behavioural tool. I don't want to get into too much detail on it on the podcast, but basically, there's people like to receive information in different ways. You're not changing who you are. You're not being manipulative. You're just communicating to the person in front of you in the way that they want to be communicated to. And some people like it fast, short, and sharp. Some people like it slow with a lot of guarantees and a lot of reassurances. And you need to be aware of those different types of people and adjust accordingly. You can't just go like a bull at a gate to every single person. That will work in some cases, but it definitely won't work in the majority of cases. So you've got to tweak your communication style to whoever the person is that's in front of you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I think we'll close on that, but that's a very good point. And yeah, I mean, I know that's powerful. There is definitely a difference in communicating to people within different markets. So understanding where you are and what your market is, I think that's probably the foremost hurdle that you need to address. So, okay, cool. Let's wrap that episode up there. And then we're going to come back with the final episode of this series. And we're going to be talking about how to sell to the right customers. So look forward to that one, listeners. So if you haven't already, head across to thesiteshed.com and register for our Toolbox Talks, where you'll be regularly sent great episodes just like this straight to your inbox, so you'll never miss one. If you want to join the community, you can head across to thesiteshed.com/members, where for a small monthly fee, you'll get access to regularly updated training material, as well as access to our forum, where you can mingle and collaborate with trade-based business owners just like you from all over the world. If you're enjoying this podcast, please head across to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. We greatly appreciate it, and it helps us spread the word and reach the masses. Likewise, if you know anyone that might benefit from the content we create, then please go ahead and share this with them.
You've been listening to Toolbox Talks by The Site Shed. For more great content just like this, head across to thesiteshed.com and join the amazing community of savvy trade-based business owners.